if you don't know, Vish and I were on a big roundtable like last week. All the heavy hitters of 49ers Twitter, Eric Crocker, Javier Vega, a lot of guys. And the last question that Jason Aponte had, who was the host, was predict who the starting quarterback will be week 1 for the 49ers. And everyone either said Justin Fields or Jimmy Garoppolo. I said Jimmy. You said Sam Darnold. And now today, like every single national writer in America had an epiphany overnight that he's a great fit for the 49ers. So how were you a week ahead of this? How did you see this brewing on the horizon?
First, before we start, subscribe to Jason Aponte's YouTube channel too, at Jason Aponte. Make sure you subscribe to him. He's great. Second of all, yeah, with the Sam Darnold thing, honestly, it's more just like I think some of the insiders like Albert Breer have been whispering this for not just they were whispering this in November, people like Peter King. And as long as you listen to the right people that keep connecting the right dots, you kind of have an idea of what's going on. And when I kept hearing those people connecting Sam Darnold, like it just feels like such an obvious move right here for the San Francisco 49ers. It's kind of unfortunate because we've talked about it. We've done like 3 Sam Darnold topics where I've kind of slammed the idea of Sam Darnold. And I said, this is the worst case scenario, blah, 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 all of that. But it just makes too much sense in terms of for the 49ers. I think they'll balk at drafting a quarterback because when you get Sam Darnold, you get the opportunity to get like a 23-year-old draft pick that you can mold, but without having the pressures of drafting a quarterback in the first round. And from that standpoint, that's where I think it really makes sense. I think he's a decent system fit for the 49ers. And that's why it just feels so obvious that the Niners would do something like that. I mean, it just feels like the obvious move, and that's where I'm at with it.
Are you sticking by this prediction that Sam Darnold will be their starting quarterback, or at least on the team this year?
Speak it out of existence, baby.
But you do think that's what's going to happen?
I'm like it's in the back of my mind, like that's what's going to happen. But it's one of those things, like it's like a coping mechanism for me. I feel like if I keep saying it's going to happen, it's not going to happen.
And you would think it would be a bad move?
Yeah, I do think it's a bad move.
I saw someone I respect on Twitter, Matthew Almond. He's Matt Breida's publicist. He said, "Dude, Sam Darnold's legit. He's Steve Young 2.0." And I was thinking, like, wow, like, okay, Steve Young 2.0. Steve Young had a very tough start to his career in Tampa. I guess that would be the parallel. And then came to the 49ers and became one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
How many years did he sit, though? That's the big thing.
4.
Yeah,
4.
See, that's the big thing.
And also, Steve Young was an amazing runner. He ran a 4.5. Sam Darnold's not exactly Steve Young as a runner.
No, he's not as physically gifted as Steve Young. I mean, Steve Young, in terms of physical gifts, is one of the more underrated quarterbacks in NFL history. To be honest, I know it sounds blasphemous to say this, but I think between him and Joe, Steve Young was the more gifted quarterback physically. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch neither, so all of you people that watched both can come yell at me, but I really think that's from what I've seen in terms of highlights, and my dad used to show me old tapes of Steve Young and Jerry Rice. Like I've seen the Dallas Cowboys game that Elvis Grbac starts and Jerry Rice has an 80-yard touchdown from the slot like 10 times. And I think Steve Young was the more talented of the 2 quarterbacks. But I think that's way too rich. Steve Young sat for 4 years in the greatest system of all time with the greatest coach, maybe of all time, behind the greatest quarterback of all time. If Sam Darnold's going to go to, if you take this back to 2015 and this version of Sam Darnold gets traded to the New England Patriots to sit behind Tom Brady for 4 years, then that might be something. I just think there's no way that you can make such a comparison. And the biggest thing with Sam Darnold to me is that, one, from a talent perspective, and the reason I'm down on it is from a talent perspective, I still think the Niners, even if Sam Darnold plays his best, is the 4th most talented quarterback in this division. And that doesn't mean Sam Darnold isn't talented. It's just that you have Matthew Stafford, who has a top 5 arm in the NFL. You have Kyler Murray, who's one of the 5 fastest or 10 fastest players in the NFL to go with a top 10 arm in the NFL. And you have Russell Wilson, who's still at 32 is a freak. So because of that, I think Sam Darnold would still be the 4th most talented quarterback in the division. And then my biggest problem is the contract, right? I've talked about it so many times. So something to keep in mind also is that this is the first year that the 5th-year option, so Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Saquon Barkley their draft, the 5th-year option becomes fully guaranteed. So Sam Darnold, if the Niners trade for him and pick up his 5th-year option, he is guaranteed $25 million regardless of what they do to him that very next year. So regardless of his 4th-year play, he's going to be guaranteed $25 million. So let's say they don't pick up that option and the best case scenario happens and Sam Darnold plays great. Then you're left with paying Sam Darnold a lot of money. And it could be the Jared Goff, Carson Wentz situation where Sam Darnold played great when you had the team loaded around him. And then once he got expensive and the team wasn't loaded around him, he starts playing bad again.
How about the Jimmy Garoppolo situation? It's Jimmy Garoppolo all over again. Best case.
So I think because of all these reasons, he just doesn't make sense to me. But he doesn't make sense to me. He makes sense in the grand scheme of things, I think, in terms of what the Niners will do.
Yeah. Do you think if they do trade for Sam Darnold, you think they'll trade their 2nd-round pick for him to 43?
If they trade 12, we can start calling this show Grant Cohn, objective 49ers reporter, and Vish Kumaran, former 49ers fan. My God.
12 is off the table, but what do you think they would trade 43 for him?
I think they might. It's almost.
And that would mean they wouldn't draft a quarterback, right?
43 is essentially the same price they paid in 2017 for Jimmy Garoppolo.
And so what they're saying is Sam Darnold is better than any quarterback we can get at 43 in this draft. We're going to bet on Sam Darnold, who was the number 3 pick in the draft and is still, 23?
Yeah, he's 23.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's rich. I think it's tough. I think it's rich. I think what you're asking.
He should sit on the bench, right?
That's what I'm
He should sit on the bench.
From a mental standpoint, I think one of the most underrated things about the NFL is the mental aspect of playing quarterback. A lot of guys probably have the physical talent to make it, but man, it's hard to take the criticism and hard to take the losses and get hit the way that a lot of these guys get hit. And Alex Smith is one example of a guy who was able to overcome all of that and resurrect his career. But then for every Alex Smith, there's a David Carr who went the career backup route. Joey Harrington was also a similar career backup route. Blaine Gabbert, career backup route. Guys guys who never find a way to resurrect it because they're mentally just shot. And how do people know whether Sam Darnold? Christian Ponder just didn't have talent to be a top 1st-round pick. That guy had the weakest arm of any 1st-round quarterback I've ever seen in my life.
Sorry to get you off track. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, no, but yeah. So with Sam Darnold, how do you know that he's mentally in the right spot? And I don't know if the Niners would be able to spend enough time with him.
There's a clip of him on the sideline saying, "I'm seeing ghosts out there." That's not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
That's not good. Sorry, keep going.
And, he doesn't strike me as, I don't know, maybe he just doesn't carry it that way, but he doesn't strike me as this Baker Mayfield kind of overconfident, overly with kind of so much self-belief that you think he will be able to overcome any sort of adversity because he believes in himself that much. He seems like a guy whose confidence might be a little flaky. It's been flaky the last 2 years. We can give a lot of reasons, but his confidence has been shaken. And the third thing is, and really the thing that worries me the most with Sam Darnold is he's not played 16 games.
That's true.
That bothers me. And
That's
it's not
true.
injuries
He
hasn't had major injuries, but didn't he miss a set of games because he lost his toenail?
Yes.
Was that Sam Darnold?
Yes. You're worried. You're upset about Jimmy Garoppolo's ankle. Dude missed games because of a toenail. And there's more about Sam Darnold now that I'm a Sam Darnold expert because this is looking like a possibility. He has played one good year of football that I'm aware of. 2016. He was terrific. His numbers were really good. He did not get better the next year. Everyone looked at him as the surefire number 1 pick. He came back the next year and had a down year. He had
Juju Smith and Ronald Jones left, and he struggled.
And then what his career has been since then is more of that year. And that reminds me of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston had an amazing redshirt freshman year or whatever at Florida State. Great numbers, won the national championship, came back the next year, had a slightly worse supporting cast, and had a worse season. And people were like, it's an outlier. He's proven he's really good. But his career ended up mirroring that season much more than the national championship one. Darnold's the same way.
Yeah, and at least Jameis Winston was considered to be one of the great high school quarterback recruits of all time. Like
That's true.
Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Jameis
Two-sport
Winston
athlete.
he was in that kind of conversation. Sam Darnold was good. He was a 4-star recruit, but not one of the great high school quarterback recruits of all time. I mean, I don't know. Look, I think there is a scenario where the situation with Sam Darnold works, but what is the actual upside with Sam Darnold? Like, I think Sam Darnold has talent. I know Grant. I don't think it'll I don't like Sam Darnold, but I don't think it'll fail if he comes to the 49ers because I think he's good enough where in this situation he could prosper. But what is that level of prospering? Like, if that level of prospering is rebuilding Sam Darnold to have the 4th best quarterback in your division, once again making $25 million, what's the point? Just draft a rookie who you don't have to rebuild and have the 4th best quarterback in your division, but your guy makes $5 million, and Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, who's going to get paid soon, and Russell Wilson all make $25 to $35 million.
Yeah, I mean, he has physical gifts, but I think they're overstated because he went to USC. He's not Justin Herbert. He's not Steve Young.
No.
He's a 6'4" quarterback who runs a 4.86 and can throw off different platforms. He's a good athlete, but not like he ain't Justin Herbert. He really doesn't merit the top 5 pick.
Yeah, so he doesn't, and I don't think he has a good arm. I don't think it's a great arm either. I think his big thing is he's really agile in the pocket. He's got a really explosive first step in terms of moving and making people miss. So it's really impressive.
Throw off different platforms.
Yeah,
he can do all. There's that clip of him against the Niners when he's getting blown out 31-6. He makes that one throw, moving to the left, touchdown, and everyone's like, "Oh my God." Yeah, okay. That was the one good play he made in that entire game.
And he has a reason, even though he has a kind of weird release that drops down here, it's actually pretty quick. He can get it out there in the quick game reasonably fast, but I don't know.
This is my concern. And I think it's the Niners' issue with Jimmy is that he's not the cerebral quarterback they expected he'd be coming from New England, sitting under Tom Brady, they had Brian Hoyer. Hoyer is a smart grinder. I think they just assumed Jimmy Garoppolo would be that too. And Jimmy's more of like an instinct field kind of a player. I think that's what Darnold is. I mean, you watch, he has no concern or ability to execute what Adam Gase is trying to do. Adam Gase has guys open and he's like, okay, I missed that, but the play's still open.
That's the other thing, right? If they had that concern with Jimmy, there was no way of them knowing. And that was even with Kyle Shanahan reportedly spending a bunch of time with Jimmy Garoppolo before his draft. They had Jimmy Garoppolo in 2018. I'm not sure how much they sat down and talked to Sam Darnold. I mean, the Jets aren't going to tell them every single detail about Sam Darnold. I think they're just better off drafting. That's why when Chris Sims put out his 3 options today, I tweeted, I think you tweeted, a lot of people tweeted, option 2 is definitely the best. Yeah, absolutely. Draft your quarterback, reset the counter in terms of money. That's the way to go. There's no question. It's not even close. It's not a debate to me.
Yeah, I agree with Ryan here. It's like, what is the point of sending a 2nd-round pick to bring in a guy who needs development, and just like the guy you already have on your team, same draft. Real quick, I wanted to get the other one. It said Niners now have $28 million in cap space, even with Ford's and Richburg's contracts. Say what you will, but Parag coming in clutch right now. Also, thoughts on Troy Warner?
I haven't watched Troy Warner at all. Parag is always clutch. Parag's the man. He manages the cap great. The Niners are never having cap issues, but at some point you have to allocate that money, and that's what the Niners have to do. Well, yeah, they have $28 million, but they need every cent of that $28 million to be able to be even like reasonably flexible because they got so many people to make decisions on.